Happy Tuesday. I'm Michael Linky. I'm the General Manager here at the Institute of Architects, and welcome to yet another Lean In. We are really happy to have you here, and a special welcome back to all of you frequent leaners. We see the same names coming up every Tuesday and Thursday, so it's really good to have you once again with us for probably, I would say, about the next 60 minutes. Today we have two speakers with us. We're really very pleased to be able to bring you today a perspective of two different presentations. For us, it's really exciting because we have Phillip Nielsen from the Regional Design Service in Corowa. And we also have Monique Woodward, the founder of Corowa in Melbourne. So today we hear from both regional and metropolitan practices around how they've really been coping in the last few weeks in the midst of COVID-19. So Phillip Nielsen will present first. He's an architect, of course, and co-founder of Regional Design Service. They're based in Corowa in New South Wales. That's a small town on the border of New South Wales and Victoria. And to be honest, that studio that Phillip will present from, they considered themselves isolated well before COVID-19. And so for us, you know, it's been a significant change. For Phil, maybe not so much. During this session, Phillip will provide an introduction to the studio, its practices. And then following his presentation, we're really pleased to have Mon with us as well, Monique Woodward, the founder of Corowa, and she's going to be sharing her thoughts on how architecture practices in more metropolitan areas have adapted to this new normal that we now find ourselves in. So Mon will share her tips, her guidance and advice for us all on how to stay connected, successful and especially sane as we traverse this current environment. So without further ado, we're really pleased to have Phillip Nielsen. Phillip is probably well known to many of you. Phillip is very well respected across the architectural profession, has been on a number of committees and also has attended, as has Mon, the Dulux study tour in Europe. So is well known to a lot of us and we're really very fortunate to have him with us. So without any further ado, over to you, Phillip. Welcome to the Lean In, and give us a bit of background about your experiences thus far.
Hi everyone. You know, thanks again to the Institute for giving the opportunity for us to have a chat about what we do and what we're experiencing at the moment in regional New South Wales / Victoria. So I'm just going to share the screen for our little presentation. So we entered the kind of global health crisis as a practice that sits, you know, in relative isolation geographically. We're 3.5 hours from Melbourne and about 8 hours with a food stop from Sydney. So we're pretty far away from major centres where the majority of our industry really resides in capital cities. We moved out here and set up the practice 3 years ago. So this is myself and my partner, Aaron. We're both co-directors, and Aaron came from a background working on the supply side of the industry with businesses like Living Edge, Artemidi and Vitra in the UK. And I came from a background, you know, quite diverse, from large practice such as Hassel and then KPDO in Melbourne before setting up the business here. And we really set up with an agenda and an idea of delivering more sustainable and better design outcomes for regional communities. So we saw a trend of D&C projects being delivered in very small townships and regions, and felt that we needed to, well, we had an opportunity to provide a better outcome. So as I was saying before, Corowa, you know, kind of sits not in the halfway point, but on the border of New South Wales and Victoria. And where we have a population of about 5,000 people in our LGA, in Corowa, about 12,000 in our LGA. And we border Indigo Shire, which is Rutherglen, Beechworth and Chiltern, little towns like that. And we're about 45 minutes west of Albury-Wodonga. So that's kind of our major centre, you would say, where a lot of our materials and suppliers come from, and also builders. We're also home to the largest piggery in the Southern Hemisphere, and we produce most of Australia's breakfast cereal at Uncle Toby's. So we do quite a lot for a small little town. So we just celebrated our 3rd birthday in Corowa, and at the end of last year, at the advice of our amazing accountant that we've built a really great relationship with in Albury, she said we should use our super to go buy a building in the main street of town. And so a week later, we had put an offer in for 220 square meters in the middle of this main street and set it up as a flexible design and gallery space. So our front half of our studio is about 100 square meters of design and art gallery. Our first exhibition was a local Wiradjuri artist, Lorraine Connolly-Northey. So we've had that actually extend through as we've closed down. So we originally had invited another design studio from Sydney to represent their work in the gallery as our second exhibition. And the kind of aim of that gallery space is to show young people in regional areas that there's career paths and opportunities in design and the arts. So a lot of regional kids are kind of encouraged to go into a trade, and we want them to be able to see that there are opportunities for the future that may not be trade-based if that's not what interests them. We also have some co-working desks, and we have the capacity to host events of up to 40 people, and some of those events have been cancelled since the lockdown as well. So photography workshops and things like that. So, but you know, we're in a really great space. We're still working from the studio at the moment. There's 3 of us in the team in a space that's 220 square meters. So we haven't had to start working from home yet, but historically we actually had capacity to work remotely because we're regional. We sometimes in Melbourne and Sydney or Brisbane, and we need to be able to access our service. So we haven't really seen a change in the way we operate since the lockdown. We like to think of ourselves as the friendly neighbourhood architect, which is why we have a shop front in the main street. And we've really worked on our engagement with our community, that they can just walk in the front door and talk to us about what we're working on. What is it that we actually do? And another part of what we deliver is community design talks and events. So we really spend a lot of our time talking to people about the value of design, the context around what we do, and the process. So how do you actually engage a landscape architect, for instance, or, you know, there was no architect in Corowa for 45 years. So a lot of people just don't understand what our role is anymore and how we can contribute to projects in regional areas. So, you know, we've been doing that for 3 years and with quite a lot of success so far. And, you know, just to have an old gentleman walk up to me in the main street and shake my hand and thank me for designing a cinema at our local golf club. You know, I don't know where that happens other places in our industry. So that's kind of, you know, an outward push of our business. We work on strategic community planning for regional areas. So Plan Rand, which some people may have seen last year through us just sharing it, and Country Division Award, 70 people, and the local town improvement committee to work out a strategy for their township that everyone thought should just be bulldozed. And, you know, the recommendations of the report are where do we put an RV dump point, and how do we lean in on grants that might only be $10,000 or $20,000? How can we access them to put in new park benches for visitors, or picnic tables down by Billabong Creek? So, you know, very small moves in terms of what we are used to in bigger projects in the city, but no less meaningful for these people. The project on the right-hand side is a project we delivered in collaboration with a consultancy agency, Projectura, which was consolidating all the community planning for the rural city of Wangaratta and their rural townships. So kind of calibrating it into district plans for each of the townships that might be 10, 15, 20 minutes apart from each other. But, you know, one of them has a supermarket, one of them has the tennis courts, and how do we connect them all and see themselves as a network rather than just individual little communities in isolation? Another project we've just recently finished is restorations of the shop fronts in Tallangatta, which was a town that was relocated in the 1950s, so the whole town was moved 8 kilometres. It has notable town status from the National Trust, and we've been helping facilitate a project with the council to, each shopfront gets about $1,600 of matched funding. So they chip in $1,200, we give them $1,600, well, the council gives them $1,600 to undertake improvements to beautify the town, but also drive economic renewal. And we kind of worked with each individual property owner, so there were 32 shopfronts, to create a uniform appearance and celebrate the 1950s character of the town. So you can see in the left-hand side, each of the owners had slowly been painting their veranda posts different colours. There was different treatments to the highlight windows. So our job really was to kind of pull it all together and, create a great outcome for this little township, and on a budget of $100,000 pretty much to do all that. So, small things, but big outcomes. We also work on public architecture, and that's a growing part of our practice. So it's our first little architecture commission for a public toilet. And on the right-hand side, a tender submission that we did for a community library in Batlow, which many people would have heard during the bushfire crisis. Batlow and Tangambalanga communities such as that. We do quite a bit of hospitality work. This on the left-hand side is a bakehouse that we're working on the expansion. That's under construction at the moment. And the little cafe on the side was one of our first projects, and it was a budget of $15,000 to renovate our local coffee shop. So, big and small. And to finish on kind of what we do, we dabble in residential. It kind of keeps the business afloat. It's probably about 60% of our work, and it varies from new build, alterations, and quite a few farmhouses that, I guess from a financial position, the farmhouses are still going in our office, and I think they're going to be the ones that kind of get us through any slowdown in work. So that is like a super brief, or hopefully brief, I didn't go on too much, intro to a bit of the work that we do with our practice. And I thought I'd just now hone in on what's been happening since really the beginning of the year. So the bushfire crisis, while we're not in a bushfire affected community, we have been, we were significantly impacted financially by delays to our hospitality projects, which all slowed. So our hospitality clients took a 60% hit in Albury, Rutherglen, Tallangatta over the bushfire crisis, which meant they slowed our projects. We had one client paying us $500 a fortnight to try and cover their outstanding invoice. We have a lot of farming clients that have properties up in Tawong Shire, so the Corryong fire, who had property loss and stock loss. So things were, whilst we didn't think we'd be very affected financially, we only really recovered from delayed invoices and projects just as we were heading into the COVID lockdown. Our local government projects that were in fire affected communities completely slowed because the project managers were understandably reassigned to the response as things evolved on a daily basis. And it really applies a lot of pressure to our grant timeframes. So all of our projects with community are tied to very strict grant timeframes that most of them had already exhausted their extensions. And as we entered into the bushfire crisis and now COVID, there's been no guarantee as to extensions again on those projects. So a lot of our projects are meant to be built by 30 June, and we still haven't even finished construction documentation because of that slowed process. And yeah, so it's interesting for us as a young practice to adapt. But I guess having been through that difficult kind of financial strain, it's kind of no different to where we are right now. Since the lockdown, we've had all of our hospitality projects that had slowed. They've all cancelled overnight. Our residential projects, we have 3 or 4. One family is, they're 2 AMBOs, and their project, while it hasn't cancelled, has just been completely delayed. And we've been trying to help manage the client to realize that it's okay to delay the project and that they don't need to worry about us, that we don't want to apply pressure to them while they're dealing with the health crisis on the front line, to think that they've got to get back to us with an email to say which terrazzo splashback they want. But we also want them to kind of put their projects on temporary hold so that we can take them out of our immediate pipeline and reassign our team to other projects. So we're kind of having to do that in the background with a bit of a fear that, you know, each might pop up every now and again. So how do we mobilize our team? We still have our construction sites are all underway with no issues with supply for materials. We've been contacting all of the material suppliers and there's been no delays. We've actually secured 2 new projects, and in the last week we've had 2 new inquiries, and we think they're people who are kind of sitting around in their houses wondering, oh, we can't keep living like this. So, you know, in terms of our private work, that's what's happened overnight. With our public projects is probably where we've seen the most complexity and contrast in different local governments. We found out last week from one of our councils that they've basically redirected all their staff off projects that are shovel ready or waiting or in development, and put their focus solely on things that are under construction on site already. So again, bringing back the grant issue that, you know, these projects still have to be built by October or December, and now they're not going to be released out for tenders. So, you know, everything's kind of slowed on that front. And I guess from a local government perspective in regional communities, you know, some of our councils have $20 million worth of backlogged projects that they're trying to deliver, and they might only have 2 or 3 project managers who work part-time. So, you know, there's a lot of pressure on them to get through this themselves and then, you know, respond to us and say, hey, we're putting the project on hold. And so there's been, you know, delays in that regard. You know, other projects that we've just started, you know, one of them's been delayed. We're meant to be finished in December. It looks like we won't even have the concept design finished by June 30. And initially there was a lot of confusion about the ISO rules when the lockdown started. So can a local council engage a contractor to repair tiles on the front of a shop front in Tallangatta? Are they allowed to commission someone to break ISO rules, or are they breaking ISO rules if they're a sole operator? So, you know, a lot of our projects were delayed, you know, little things, but those trades had to move to other jobs and now they can't go back. They need to reprogram themselves. So coordinating all that has been interesting. And, you know, community engagement's completely stopped. So we're actually helping a small community a consultant to visualize online engagement for a tender that they're writing for at the moment. So yeah, it's complex. And this is my last slide. So, you know, kind of honing in on what we're doing, looking forward into the next 6 months. So our new studio, the renovation was just stage 1. The second stage is to finish a catering kitchen so we can have more community workshops and events, and also install an accessible toilet. So we want to be an accessible employer, and, you know, the toilet will allow us to do that. And a lot of our clients up here don't see the value, so we're trying to lead by example. It also means that we can have accessible access for all for events. We're working through our kind of opportunities for grants. So the exhibitions in the gallery and other community events that we sit on, Aaron and I are on like so many local community committees, from arts prizes and, you know, creative things like that. So we're trying to work through all those grants at the moment while we might have a little more time, more so for the recovery. So when things get back to normal, well, as close to normal, we have got the funds to keep running art prizes in regional towns. Strategically, we're re-looking at our financials with our accountant and also HR. So Aaron's kind of taking the charge there. With our marketing and PR, we actually offered a 1 day a week role before the lockdown to a communications team member. Lucy joined us 3 weeks ago now and is working remotely to look at our kind of outward communication, our media releases, and also kind of business development. So she's developing, we're putting together our submission for the New South Wales Government Architect Design Pre-Qualification Panel, which is due in the middle of May. So we're trying to gear up to be able to lean in for some bushfire recovery work in case our local government work dries up or our private clients. So we're really kind of pivoting towards that in a big way, but we're already kind of planning that because of the fallout from the bushfires on the business. And I guess, you know, from an industry engagement perspective, I and we are connecting so much more to all of you now. So we're, you know, I've joined the country division of New South Wales Country Division Committee in the last few weeks, and I've also joined the editorial committee for New South Wales with the AIA, with the Architecture Bulletin. So we're really trying to look at the opportunity to connect more, tell more people about what we're experiencing out here and how we can adapt regional practices in a way that doesn't end up in a lot of D&C contracts coming through economic stimulus because people are just trying to push projects out. So it's quite broad, but we're very positive, and we're basically seeing, you know, like doing the renovations is to invest in our local trades so they can keep operating, lean in on the stimulus packages, and I guess invest into the downturn rather than ride it. So that's kind of where we're at in a very brief way. I'll stop sharing my screen and.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Philip. A few questions have come through. I've written some down for you as well. But first of all, David just had a quick one on the chat, and he was saying, you mentioned you were talking about ISO rulings. You're not talking about like an ISO 9001, like an
no, like isolation.
So isolation laws. Okay, good to clear that up. No, that's perfect. One of the questions from Lucia, who was on the call and still is, she said, thanks very much for sharing. I'm wondering what your original motivation was to move to a regional area. What would you say to that, Philip?
The ambition was to engage with the general public more in design. So we really wanted to come out and set up a practice that directly connected to those who don't feel like they have a connection to us. And we wanted to bring them into the conversation of architecture and design and why they should engage with it more, but also that they already understand it. And this is something that I learned through my mother, who once I finished uni, she stopped talking to me about design, and she's a creative person. And once I became a professional, she kind of stopped asking me questions. And I think it was that she didn't feel like her questions were valid. So, you know, she wouldn't be afraid for me to say that. So if my mum doesn't feel confident to talk to me about what I do, then what does the person that walks beside me in the street feel about what I do? So we really wanted to change the perception of our industry, and we wanted to bring everyone on our journey that we're all involved in design.
Do you feel that your approach has demystified architecture? I mean, when you mention architecture to people in general, members of the public sometimes say, oh, we can't afford an architect, it's an expensive luxury that just is deemed not necessary. Do you feel that your approach has demystified the architectural profession and the value that an architect brings to a build?
We feel like we're getting there. And again, another little story, we're at the cafe we did, the chairs that we spec'd for the table are Philippe Starck Cartel generic C chairs. They're designed to counterbalance on the edge of a table. Now those chairs we were able to get for the client for $200 each. They only needed 12. And, you know, they saw the value. And then a little old lady came up to me one day when I was ordering my coffee, and she pulled me aside and said, can I show you something? And I'm like, sure, like, what is it? And she said, look at these chairs. And she picked it up and she put it on the edge of the table. And she said, look, they hang on the table, which means at the end of the day, they can mop the floor without stacking the chairs. And I laughed and I said, oh, look, I know, because we picked them. And she kind of went silent for a bit. And that's when she realized that design was actually just consideration to how the user needs to function with the product. So it, you know, it was this little thing that happened in 2 minutes in my day. But for her, she saw that, this is why you would engage a designer on your project.
Oh, God bless the grannies of Corowa.
I know.
A question from Ken. Ken is a frequent leaner. He's always on our calls, and he's asked a question. He said he really likes the concept, Philip, of a studio in the centre of town and engagement with the public. You know, your galleries, opening it up, having that very strong community vibe. Question from Ken is, what size is your practice, and how broad is your reach? You talked about visiting Sydney and Melbourne fairly regularly. So tell us a little bit about the size of your practice.
So at the moment, we're a team of 3, including the 2 directors. Well, actually 3.5. We're contemplating actually employing a project architect to relieve the directors a bit of some of the documentation so we can work on more business development. But our reach is up to 3 hours drive really from Corowa, and we don't pitch for work in the cities. There's enough people who can do that work. We are working in Griffith on a master plan for the Pioneer Museum, so that's about 3 hours north from us. We work in Salangata, that's an hour and a half, so Tawong Shire. We've pitched for work in Snowy Valleys, which is Batlow, and that's about a 3-hour drive. So we kind of we're growing, I guess the answer is, within that 2 to 3 hour drive.
Great stuff, thank you. A few people on the chat and on my text have said that they're very envious of your shelving, so well done on having such a beautiful space.
These actually came with the building.
Did they? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a chemist and they left it and we were like, whoa, everything's recycled here, nothing's new.
Stuff. I like a bit of sustainability, but that's great. You did talk a little bit, Philip, about the bushfires. You know, that was big news. December, January, the Institute, obviously, we sprang into action and we pulled together, you know, our architects' dedicated space, you know, in terms of helping communities in regional and remote areas rebuild. Do you feel that since COVID-19 has now become the subject, the trending topic on every bit of social media and on the news, do you feel that the bushfire victims and communities and regional centres have been forgotten for something that seems to be far greater in terms of impact?
I think yes, and I think you know, for Talangata, for instance, we're currently doing some community online surveys and feedback, and a lot of the residents that live in Corryong feel that, you know, what about Corryong, because they were heavily affected by the fires, why is their money being spent in Talangata? And the reason is that the grant funding was actually allocated 5 years ago for the use in Talangata, and it can't be reassigned. So I think what we try and really work on with, you know, through these times is reminding people, or giving them the tools and facts around why things might be happening elsewhere when they were so heavily affected. And I think that's probably what, you know, a lot of these regional communities are feeling. They see a lot of news of everything else and they feel like they've been left behind. Whereas I think a lot of us know that in the background, like for us, we're trying to get on this pre-qualification design panel so that when the bushfire recovery work happens, we can deliver better outcomes for those communities. But they don't know that that's happening. So we try and talk to as many people as possible, say, look, these things are happening in the background. There are people who are going to come out and engage with you. It's not all gone away. But it, you know, the public perception and the media definitely looks like it's just kind of gone away.
Great stuff. One final question before we then move on to Mon, who we're looking forward to hearing from. A question from Mike, and he says, do you see any benefit in linking up with larger architectural practices in, say, Melbourne or Sydney to take advantage of the scale and to obviously partner on and collaborate on different projects?
We have actually tried to collaborate with some larger practices. We pitched for the library in Wodonga last year, or not last year, 2017, with a larger studio who had more capacity. Like, we were only a year in really, so there's no way we would have ever won that project on our own. We were unsuccessful, and we have recently also tendered with another city practice on another job. But yeah, we definitely want to work on those opportunities, and if, you know, they're out there, call us. We're happy to discuss it.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Philip. We might leave it there if that's okay, but thank you for inviting us to Corowa. Having been there a few times and obviously having mutual friends with you, Philip, it's an incredible place. So, you know, the invitation is out there to you all. If you're in Corowa, please drop in and see RDS, see Philip and see his team. It's a good opportunity to collaborate and meet a fellow member. So thank you very much, Philip. That's been really insightful. Thank you for sharing your practice and opening up the door to what you're experiencing. We are very pleased to have with us Monique Woodward, the founder of Wah. Monique is very well known to us. You probably recognise Monique from the 2019 conference, which she was creative director for, and she brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. And so we're really pleased to have you with us today, Mon. Welcome. The background is by Reko Rennie, an incredible Indigenous artist, and a lot of comments on the background as well for both of you. So well done on having such impressive and compelling backgrounds today.
I'm actually in the studio, so it's like a real background. There are real artwork, so
great stuff. So we've heard from Phillip, and now really over to you, I suppose, just to get your thoughts on how you've found a practice, or your practice has been coping since the COVID-19 crisis has come to light, and the steps you've taken in terms of, I suppose, reacting and adapting to the new normal.
Yeah, well, I mean, thanks, Phil, for that presentation. That was amazing. And I totally concur. Phil drives everywhere because I feel like I see him used to see him at a bunch of different events, all in different states. And yeah, thanks to Michael and the Institute. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Share. Sorry. Yeah, so as Michael said, I'm just gonna, really quickly sort of talk through Rona style, so coronavirus style, and what we're doing. We have been reflecting, I guess, as a lot of people have over the last month and a half, and we sort of realized that this is Wawa's 10th year, and that our decade, really has been bookended by the GFC and now the global pandemic, which is kind of an interesting thing. One of the things we're proudest of is our B Corp certification. For those that don't know, it's basically, joining a global network of businesses that meet the highest social and environmental sustainability requirements. It took us a year to get that certification, and there's only 5 architects in Australia that have been able to achieve that goal. But yeah, I guess, we were thinking about the fact that we did spend 4 years in our home office, which, I guess came out of the GFC, came out of the fact that we were keen to start a practice within that environment. We had quite a few projects at the time, and we indulged in lunch activities because we lived in Carlton, which anyone knows is close to DOC, which has really amazing snacks, and we would have sort of 1 or 2 students at a time, maybe at our home, until we couldn't stand it anymore. And then we moved into a shop front in Rathdown Street, which was amazing. Like, Phil's practice, there was a lot of engagement with the community. We were open for open house, and a lot of clients would kind of walk past our shop front and say, hey, like, can I have a 6-pack of architecture, please? And yeah, we would start, a lot of residential projects like that, people just literally walking in the door. And that served us really, really well for that 5 years, until we basically just got too big to take it anymore. And when we decided to move, we, everything started breaking. And so, yeah, we've spent basically less than a year in this beautiful studio that I'm sitting in at the moment, which, I only came in here because I had to print something. But, it's our sort of $70,000 studio space. It's now sitting vacant, with plants that are kind of dying a little bit from neglect. But yeah, this is Claire Cousins, a little, 3 office building that we love so much. So yeah, we'll be back here soon. But yeah, you can see this photo was taken of the team in February. And it now just looks like this complete sort of workplace OH&S Corona nightmare to have everyone. But yeah, the other Friday, you know, we all made these little avatars so that we could hang out and have dance parties in the internet. And so, yeah, I guess it's sort of interesting just how quickly it sort of changed, and then I guess how much work there is in actually making sure that the team is okay, and that we still have this feeling of fun and playfulness that, you know, I guess is really core to our values as a practice. And then, yeah, how do you do that when everyone's isolated is a challenge. So I guess our practice, you know, our website, this is a landing page for our website. It's a sort of choose your own adventure between public and private. You know, we had traditionally been very residentially focused, but at the start of last year, we basically signed up 0 new resi clients because of the Royal Banking Commission and the election. You know, we really signed up no one, and it really led us to lean into public work and doing a lot of EOIs, and we geared up very much with who we brought on to the team and what kind of submissions we were doing. So I feel as though we kind of, diversified. We always wanted to, but diversified really heavily, this time last year, which we're really, really fortunate that we did that, because we've, again, haven't really signed up any new resi projects. But we do love them. They're always delicious. They're always really, you know, packed with yummy materials and textures and colors. And, you know, our clients come to us because they, you know, they often quote our mantra back, which is life's too short for boring spaces. And we kind of like to have a lot of fun, and our clients are generally maybe as crazy as we are. So we do new builds. So this is a new project, Mary Creek house, that is in the awards this year. And yeah, again, just really, really playful forms and colors. And, you know, we do renovations as well. So this is Tiger Prawn House that was in the awards 2 years ago. So yeah, we love our brick in Melbourne. And we also do interiors, so apartment fit outs. This is also in the awards this year. A renovation to a modernist apartment. So we kind of do all of those things in the public space. We do dunnies, as you can see, and we like pimp them out. And we do a lot of, or we're trying to do more community projects. So this is our Corowa Park football club that we worked with the council. I mean, with the client to actually secure bipartisan funding. And you know, I feel like people have heard me talk about this project before, that we, you know, helped. The footy club had been trying to do a business case for like 10 years and had no success in getting council or state government funding. And then we came on board to visualize the project, you know, renders and plan. And then, we basically secured funding. And then that was the pro bono work initially. And then we obviously secured fees through that process. But we'd been working on that project for a really, really long time, and kind of helped leverage our move into council projects, especially community projects. You know, childcare is something that we're doing at the minute, and just general sort of sporting pavilions are the kinds of work that we've been going for. We did sort of dabble in a bit of multi-res. We got a few town planning permits, but we never really got anything built. The closest thing was our Nightingale project. This was a collaboration with Breathe, but the council ended up buying our site to turn it into a park as part of their Nightingale Village, which was really sad because we love this project so much. But yeah, we also had done in the past, crowdfunding. So we were working with a mayor who was keen to visualise this sort of pool on Seaside Pool for St Kilda was his sort of catchphrase. And again, we kind of were paid, we took a gamble on this. Our office doesn't really do, hadn't really done competitions at that point. And so we sort of moved, we sort of said, well, like if we're going to lose money on a competition, we may as well kind of invest it into a community project. And so we did, we raised quite a bit of money, and we're on the radio and did start some good campaign for that project. But yeah, that really did lead us to the work that we do with Yarra Pools. I'm on the board of Yarra Swim Co, which, I really love. It's that kind of design thinking, architects being at the table when decisions are made, and getting access to a whole gamut of people that you wouldn't normally be able to speak to for these city shaping projects. Like we do have a ambition to work at this scale, and I guess as an emerging practice, no one's handing us these projects on a silver platter, which is totally fair enough. But nevertheless, we are keen to engage with those, and so to fund the work that we did on Yarra Pools, we ran a design studio through RMIT. We held off visualizing a lot of the work that we did here until we'd finished an engagement process with 35 different key stakeholders, including the Salvation Army, the Wurundjeri, the Boonwurrung, the various, Melbourne City Council, Lifesaving Victoria, Water Polo Victoria, etc. And so that kind of was our first real level of engagement with community, and we kind of fell in love with that and realised how hard it is, but that it's something that we wanted to pursue. But again, I guess it's like these little actions build confidence, and so it allowed us to feel confident that we could tackle these bigger projects. Like the question that was in the chat box just before around teaming up with larger architects, we love doing that. In fact, we sort of badger a lot of larger firms to say that they need an emerging architect on their team if they're doing a competition, and then that they really do need one that's led by a female as well for their diversity tick box. And so we've this particular image was one that we won by ourselves actually for the Melbourne Uni underground car park. They were looking to bring a lot of different faculties together and work out what it could be if it wasn't going to be a car park. And so that's an ongoing project for us that we're hoping won't disappear. Master planning, we had the same strategy that we approached a school that needed a master plan that didn't have one, University High, and we ran it through a design studio at RMIT to fund that work for us, but also to give us experience in engagement with students and teachers. The sort of built outcome of that was a small landscape project, but valuable nonetheless, and allowed us to prove to the Victorian School Building Authority that we could work in the education sector. And so this was a gym lining that we completed, but we're doing 2 other projects for that particular school. This is a refurb of their other gym into a Year 12 centre. So that's the drawings are currently out to tender for that. And then our biggest VSBA project is the revamp of this beautiful brutalist public works department building. It was one of the first vertical schools, and that's a big project for us. If those two projects had gone on hold, this would be a very different talk. And we were, I guess, really lucky to have lent into government schools rather than, I guess, hospitality or multi-res necessarily. So this is Janus Ruus. It's Wowowa's emblem. Basically, Janus is the Roman god of beginnings, transitions, duality. He had two faces that face both the past and the present. And but this is our Aussie version with a Victoria tramp stamp on the neck. But in a way, it's kind of really appropriate, because I feel as though we had to really instantly pivot from a mindset of abundance, which is very popular with, you know, marketers and entrepreneurs, to this very sort of finite understanding of the work that we had. What if we, with Corona, what if we don't get any more work? You know, it's a very different understanding, because we'd really taken that gamble to invest in moving into public work, and we feel like we'd actually just sort of got to that tipping point where the gamble and investment that we'd made as a small practice had paid off. And so we were starting to see these quite big invoices that we thought would basically just continue. But as, you know, the budget got pushed out to November, and any school projects that we might have picked up along that journey as we'd expected with our forecasting, at this point potentially wouldn't get paid by those if we did pick them up until April. And so, yeah, what does it mean? We worked out that we were eligible for the JobKeeper as of May, which is amazing, which, you know, brings down our rent. But yeah, I guess what happens, after everyone's kicked out of the lifeboat in the last quarter of the year, I guess is something that we will assess over a week by week basis, and it feels like that's a full-time job. But yeah, I guess we were lucky enough that none of our projects have gone on hold, except one little one that we were doing. You know, one of the quick pivots that we did was put everyone down to a 9-day fortnight and take a 10% pay cut. Directors took a 20% pay cut and probably doubled their hours, which is, you know, might sound familiar to a lot of people. But I guess forensically going through all of our expenses, what interest we were paying, the subscriptions, actioning cancellations, negotiating discounts and things like that was something that we did in the immediate, and then have our accountant on speed dial to work out what subsidies we could use and how we could actually leverage some of the initiatives to our ATO advantage, for example. But yeah, I guess we did go into isolation fairly early. We from Wednesday the 18th of March was when we went into ISO. We had a team meeting on Monday where we discussed it. Everyone brought in their laptops. On Tuesday we worked out the software we were going to use, which is TeamViewer, who was going to be on a VPN, and things like that. As software we use Rhino and Revit mostly. On Wednesday we did a trial and then no one came back, basically. We actioned a OH&S sheet that everyone had to fill out to actually review their workplace, their new from home workplace, and discovered that most people needed to bring in, come and grab their chair or their second monitor or their footstool or things like that. And so making sure that everyone was safe in their workspace. And then, really leaning into, I'm not sure if other states have that, but the small practice forum and medium practice forum both set up Slack groups which I'm sure will last into the, will become the norm. But basically, it was this amazing resource of everyone sort of, asking questions and talking about, their situation and what had gone on hold and who was putting, who was taking a pay cut and who wasn't, and, who needed staff, and these kind of things that just sort of in those early few weeks just seemed like a crazy panic. We had a lot of tail end residential projects, and so I really love this like tradie Sani, but yeah, we were sort of in the midst of negotiating. And so how do you do that when how do you add in a force majeure clause into the contracts? What does that mean? We've managed to sort of negotiate our way and realize that the Simple Works contract at this point in time feels robust enough to handle those conversations with a sort of combined sense of neutrality in terms of costs sharing and things like that. I think that everyone's trying to, from fitness people to children's book writers or whoever it is, everyone's madly becoming these internet sort of influencers. And I was quite stressed personally around, should I be doing these videos, or these are some previous videos that I'd done in like 2014. I was like, I should revamp those, and that was causing me a lot of stress. And then at some point I just realized, like, just give yourself a break. Like, we're architects, it's hard enough actually coping with the situation that we have at the minute, and making sure our team's safe, that we have, extreme levels of communication with all of our clients. And, how do we navigate that we just need to give ourselves a break. One thing that we did, super quickly was, these we wanted to celebrate the awards. We had 4 entries in, but how do you celebrate what would usually be a festival when you can't really do that? So we had these like dance party emoji things, which were kind of stupid, but really on brand anyway, because we love having a bit of fun. And I guess it's a stark reminder that, for me personally, things just aren't going to be the same post-Rona as they were, because I'm 33 weeks pregnant. And I guess in terms of a communication strategy, leaning into community groups and work that you were already sort of doing, that sort of led me to do the conference. How do you use your agency to help others? And that was how the conference really came about. And then thinking about how we would do that in the future, I guess, is something that I'm thinking about, rather than sort of necessarily trying to be this influencer at this point in time, because I know that we're going to get back into our studio at some point in the future. But I'll leave it there.
Great stuff. Thank you, Mon, for that. You talked about working from home for 4 years before you set up your practice. I've been here 6 weeks, and it feels like 4 years to me. You talked about JobKeeper, and that's something that has been really at the forefront of many members' minds, the issues in relation to accessing JobKeeper. My question to you, did you find it easy? Was it quite difficult to achieve? What was your experience with the process?
Yeah, I mean, basically Scott Woodward, the other director of Corowa, has basically been on speed dial to our accountants the entire time to try and work out ways that we could leverage that. So for me personally, it's been really easy. For Scott, it's been really hard. But that we have been sharing a lot of that information on the Slack groups for the different directors. And so that's been a really useful resource. I guess at the minute we're trying to really load up April to make us as to make us seem as though we would be 30% under that average at the minute. So trying to not cook the books, but I guess trying to work out, a strategy so that we can be eligible. We'd actually hired someone, and we're 6 days out from her being able to get JobKeeper, which is extremely annoying. But, we had someone on mat leave, and so she'll be able to come back on the JobKeeper as well. So I guess it's just talking to, your accountants.
Yeah, having them on speed dial is a good point. Phillip talked about projects being delayed. You talked about projects disappearing, both, similar circumstances, both starting with D, but having dramatically different results. Are you seeing the majority of projects dry up, disappear, or delayed? What's your view in Melbourne?
For example, we were doing work with GPT, so Melbourne Central, and so that has a hold on it after SD. So we'd only really started that project anyway. But yeah, I guess our Resi projects have all full steam ahead. It's just more that we won't put on potentially more projects at the start. But yeah, the VSBA projects, it's a train that waits for no man. So I guess we were just lucky in that situation.
True. Don't forget, if you do have any comments or questions for Mon, pop them into the chat box and we'll continue. I suppose I'm just conscious of time and seeing one of your reminders pop up on your screen while you're presenting. You have 4 minutes away from your next meeting. But my question to you, and this is my final question, for both you and Phillip, if we can get Phillip back online, what would be your, and I've asked this a couple of times in the lean-ins, in closing, what would be your final piece of advice for our members during this time? What would it be, Mon?
I guess mine's the same advice that we always take in our studio, which is to celebrate the small wins. So, the one little project, one of the little projects that we put on was a $10,000 fee to do a playroom, and I don't know, we all had a drink, except me, to that. So yeah, I think it's just taking it one step at a time.
Great. And what about you, Phillip? What's your one piece of parting advice to our members, wherever they are, remote, regional, urban? What's your one piece of advice for our members that you'd like to leave us with?
Well, we're the same as Monique. It's celebrate the small wins. Everything you get across the line, or every little project that comes up out of this, embrace it, celebrate it, and run with it, and see what you can achieve.
Yep, sounds great. And so, Mon, let's talk about mat leave. When and how long are you thinking of taking off? I mean, COVID-19 is one thing, but what's your sort of plans post baby?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of amazing, right? Because I was really concerned that I was going to be really isolated at home, and that I wasn't going to be able to work from home if I wanted to. But yeah, now I feel like, I have this fear because there's obviously no prenatal classes, and you can't go to the hospital, and just all these really crazy baby related things that are a bit intense. But now I'm just totally set up from home. I can pester my team anytime I want, on no sleep. And yeah, so again, I have no real plans, because how can you plan? But at least I'm totally connected.
No, that's great. Well, all the very best, Mon, for your pregnancy and forthcoming birth, and we wish you and Scott all the very best. I think today's been fantastic. You've both been really raw and honest and open, and that's exactly what these lean-ins are designed to do. We leave the waffle at the door. We, understand we've been able really to have a very good deep dive into how your businesses have operated and the steps that you've overcome in terms of having to adapt to this new way that we're working. So thank you to both of you, and the evident amount of work that you've put into today. I hope that has been really beneficial to all of you joining us on the Zoom call today. So thanks for those very valuable insights, and don't forget to keep celebrating the small wins. So that's it for today. That's it for today's Lean In. We have another one in 48 hours time, and that's on Thursday at 12 noon Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra time, and Brisbane. And that's going to be with Sue Langley, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Langley Group. And she's going to be working with us on how we handle our emotions in times of uncertainty. I've seen Sue present before. She is incredible. The amount of work that she has put in with architects, especially over recent weeks. She has been working with Build Environment Channel, one of our major corporate partners, to deliver a session specifically designed for architects on how to handle emotions in times of uncertainty. And so some of you might have already been exposed to Sue, but we very much look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. So that's it. I've been Michael Linky. I've been your MC today. Hope you've enjoyed the session. Take care, and we look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. Thanks very much for joining us, and have a great day. Cheers.